Well, it made it through like 90% of the opening credits before it stalled out, I noticed.
Yeah, yeah,
I was like, well,
that's
that's
too.
cool. So, well, it got through a lot of it, a lot more than I expected it to. Hey,
Um,
Pepper, how you doing, man?
oh, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm drinking my tea. Not
Yes. Actually,
coffee.
I got
Uh,
coffee.
but I mean, to my discredit, you may be drinking coffee, but I have yerba mate. So,
That's a
and
thing.
um,
Oh, man. So, I'm going to go ahead and say, oh, hey, Donald, you're with us this morning.
yeah,
Oh,
hi.
good. So, good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. Alrighty, we're going to do a short show, relatively speaking, because Pepper has to get along, and I am completely wiped out from not sleeping very well last night, which is why coffee.
Yes, I didn't sleep well myself last night, but I knew I needed to get everything in order today because I have another meeting, but this is more of a get to know you type meeting, so it's not super like structured, but it's still
Right.
important. So yeah, that's been fun. But yeah. Oh, if I didn't say so already, hi Donald.
Well, I mean,
Uh,
he's hanging there. He's doing a good
yeah,
job.
yeah.
I
So
hope we don't have our visitors from Twitch coming in.
I was actually thinking about that. That's like super weird, like because your other shows, they're not there. They're only
No,
there when I'm here.
it actually is conspicuous enough to make me think, are these like buddies of yours that are no longer buddies of yours, or something,
Oh, hell
like
no. No, they're not
people who
anybody's
just,
mine.
well, I mean, they were clearly trolling. I mean, I don't think that was really what they thought. I think they were just trolling because they seemed like they were kids. You know what I mean? Like 14, 15, 16.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, let's go into this one chat and say the worst possible things we can think of.
yeah. Um, I've been noticing that a lot lately, and especially in the art community, where all of a sudden, like, you normally have like maybe the youngest person is like in their, um, maybe the mid to early 20s, and then
Yeah,
all of a sudden you'll get an 11-year-old
right?
and like a 12-year-old, and then all of a sudden it's like all the preteens and teenagers start flooding in. Um,
Hey, Allie, how you doing, man? So
uh, Hi.
speaking of random people from Twitch that we do like, it's good to see that.
Hi. I think this is the first time I've seen Allie.
Yeah,
So hi, how are you? And to respond, um,
yeah. Donald's been having.
oh,
He says he's been having sleep problems and he was sick. Oh,
no.
it's
Well,
okay.
I hope you feel better, and trust me, I haven't been sleeping well as well for like maybe a week solid.
Well, you've got stress kind of going on in your life, though.
Yeah, I do, and then like I had so much stress at a certain point that I had a big red mark right here. Um,
Just
it just
rub your
appears.
face.
No, it just it appears. Like
Yeah.
I don't rub my face when I'm stressed out, but it just appears right there. Um,
I haven't heard anything about Facebook stopping live streams in October. We'd all
uh,
have to move over to where Allie is because she's over on Twitch,
um,
which makes total sense.
as far as the live streams go, from what I was hearing, it's about channels that are not friendly for kids. It's this really weird gray area. They're already starting to tell people they can't do live streams. Um, but but yeah, it's a super weird thing. I haven't really read much of it though.
Right.
From the
Hey,
gist
Allie,
of it, it's just yeah.
I understand if you got to go to class, that's cool. Yeah. And like I said, as an ex-teacher, I'm going to say go to class. I'm always going to do this. But I'm glad you were here. for a little bit. That's always awesome.
I'm glad I got to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's in the UK.
Ah, okay.
So we have to keep like thinking, okay, so it's 5 p.m. We have to do the time switch thing like I have to do whenever I'm talking to my Japanese friends. Like I have to sit there and go, okay, don't call them now. It's the middle of the night.
Yeah,
like,
I have a pal that writes Dan Barnes. He writes horror.
yeah.
So
I think I'm familiar with him. I think I've met him once or twice.
he's he's an interesting guy, and like he did a book called Bloodstained Canvas, Dinner Party. Dinner Party is actually really like I haven't gotten a chance to get the physical book. I really, really want it. It's yeah, Donald. It's probably the same reason why YouTube got sued.
Yeah. So,
Uh,
Allie, what Donald's saying is that he thinks that that Facebook's going to have to restrict streaming at some point here soon because they're being sued. And so, my feeling is really honestly, I work hard to make my shows totally safe for anybody of any age, mostly because I think anybody who wants to draw should have people their own peeps that they can talk to. And I started drawing when I was 6 years old, so it would have been awesome if I had somebody at 6 who I could say, okay, wait, what's wrong with using a ballpoint pen? You know?
Yeah.
Oh.
Unfortunately, the downside to certain parts of the community, especially the comic book like creation community, I have found. I have found personally that I'm a part of, like the chat rooms and stuff. There are some that are really great for kids. They even have like a whole section where it's nothing but kids talking to other kids, being mentored by artists, and it's great. It's great. Then you have like other chat rooms where, like I was pointing out before, where all of a sudden we start getting an influx of preteens and teenagers. And
We'll help them out.
Yeah.
Just bring them along.
And sometimes like the situations in those chat rooms that they start becoming a part of that normally kids weren't a part of, all of a sudden get thrusted into these conversations that are extremely adult.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's not what we do here, so it's all good.
Yeah, like I want to make sure that like I make this difference. Like here, every single time I think I've talked to you, we've always tried to like focus on like maybe a little bit of our personal lives, and then we go into artwork or we discuss things with artwork. But discussing the art community as a whole is kind of like a weird conundrum because there's a lot of different facets to it. So,
well, I mean, artists are like everybody else. We're a very diverse group of people.
Oh yeah, and art does start early. Like
I said, I've been drawing since I was 6. So
yeah, I was I think 3 or 4 or something like that.
I was referring to you the other day because I was doing a watercolor painting.
Oh.
And I brought out my watercolor tin, and I was, you know what? I'll just fetch my watercolor tin because it's over here on the May line. But I was talking about in my watercolor tin, I have these extra bays that are still open down here.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was saying was, Allie's been drawing since she was 2. You know what? If it's in your blood, it's in your blood. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was talking about the fact that these these buckets are removable, and so the thing I like about these removable buckets, which is hard to do with one hand, I'm gonna try to do it with 2. But these little removable buckets.
You know what? Give me a second. Give me a second.
Yep. So for Allie, because see, But these little removable buckets I give these little removable buckets to Pepper, and then he fills them with his very special paint.
So this is my very special paint. These are actually the paints I make.
It's almost like we have our watercolor tins. And I notice that yours is the same brand as mine.
Yeah, it is. It's
So
yeah.
I learned to do this, by the way, from one of the guys at the Guyries up here.
Oh, you mean the swatching cards?
Yeah, because I didn't think to do that, but the color down here is darker than what it turns out on paper. And so I will always pick the wrong darker color because I can't. So he was saying, the guy at Guyries was like, no, dude, swatch them. Put little swatches at the top. And I'm like, oh, that's so smart.
Actually,
sometimes I feel stupid because I'm like, I've been painting for 6 years now, and I never thought about that.
So here's the deal: and this is one thing that it's like a pet peeve of mine. It's a really big pet peeve, but it's a pet peeve. This is a mixing area, little flap, and I see people putting like a whole bunch of stuff like right here, and like negating the fact that it's a mixing part.
Yeah, I put mine in the lid.
And then I don't know if you know this, but this company that you got, Mead, right?
Mm-hmm.
The lid, this area,
yep,
are larger mixing wells so that you have bigger brushes that are able to be mixed.
That's why I have a bigger area right here.
Yeah, and well, you have the larger pack of them. Like you have the. It looks like you have the 36 or the 48.
Yeah. Hey, Brent. Welcome to the show. You don't need to kick Allie. Allie, just so you know, the last couple of weeks we've had some weird trolls in our Twitch feed. So it's like, and so Brent has been going over to Twitch and kicking people off of Twitch. So I was saying, wait, Allie's over there. Don't kick her off because we like her. So it's like, oh no. Better tell Brent that because he's been doing a really good job of policing the Twitch channel. But we seem to not have our two trolls, so
yeah.
I really is it Meadine?
I call it Mead because I mean that's just me, and I'm a dirty American.
Mine's blue.
I have the blue one. I also have the pink one, and I also have a black one.
Yeah, I think I would color code them for things if I had more than. I mean, I haven't filled this guy up yet.
I think my pink one
in here.
Yeah, I think my pink one is my skin tone palette that I made personally, like for me to use.
Right.
And
yeah,
then,
I have a very limited skin tone palette, which really irritates me because most of the people I draw are ethnic, and all I really have is Caucasian, which is bizarre.
I have a color that I literally call brown skin.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a mixture of different colors, but I try to do like a neutral, a cool, and a warm for darker skin tones. And
if you were to do a set of paints, if you ever come up with a need to do paints, I would love a set of paints that were different skin tones with a warm and a cool, like a warm highlight and a cool dark. I would love that because that would be extraordinarily useful because I do. The biggest problem that I have is I can mix the paints, but since I'm doing comics, the colors will vary from page to page because I had to remix from day to day. And so I'm trying to get to a static, this is the paint color for like my captain, because my captain's Asian. Her skin will like fluctuate from too yellow to too pink. I can't seem to stabilize that color. And I have in my head, I know what color her skin is. But then, of course, by the time I've mixed it, my eyes just sort of slide, and I know that I'm doing it wrong. And somewhere along the line, I realized it didn't go over well.
So the one thing that I can say to that is
Nice.
when you're doing
That's Brent's paint cases out of an Altoids.
Yeah, I have a few. Like, I have a ton of Altoid tins. They're awesome.
The entire stack right there.
Yeah. I actually got handmade watercolor paints from another company, and they gave them to me in a vintage Altoids tin.
Oh man, that's beautiful.
Yeah. The company is called what was it? Ruby Mountain Paint Co.
Mm-hmm.
They're based out of Fort Collins in Colorado, here where we live in this state. I've gotten to meet Kate. She's wonderful, and she makes really good watercolors. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I turn to them. She has a color called Ruby's Gray, which basically disperses very nicely and basically separates in tone on purpose. So, like, I'll use this for like very specific reasons. But basically, if it lays flat, it looks like a Payne's Gray, but then all of a sudden it turns into like browns and blues separating from one another, and it's really good effect.
Right. Allie, I completely agree. I've been totally digital for quite a few years, but then in the last year or so, I found a website called drawbox.com. And it's what it is the guy who's in charge of that website, he realized that a lot of us artists are missing basic skills, like basic starting skills. So he started sort of this is the boring part of drawing a website. He has us draw lines. And so I've been doing that every morning here on my show as a warm-up. So I'll draw a number of lines, then you draw curves, and you have to make sure you don't put your elbow down on the table, and all of like the basic skills that all of us artists really should have learned, but then didn't. And I have discovered that since I have started doing that with a show, I've been much better here on this tablet. Because I can lift my elbow up and draw a very nice straight line. And so that's been a big plus. So even though I consider myself mostly a digital artist, I've recently decided to get into watercolors because a buddy of mine's a watercolor painter. And then of course, Pepper here makes watercolors, but watercolors are relatively cheap. To start. So if you just want to start figuring out how to do it, it's a good place to start because oils are expensive and everything that you do with oils is expensive. I know you're about to say provisionally. I
just want to say that you said Ali was in the UK.
Yeah.
If you do watercolors, there's a lot of good watercolors to start off with, based in the UK, like companies that are there. I do a little bit of research. There's some.
Ain't nothing wrong with miniature painting, Brent. I like miniature painting.
Yeah, I actually, miniature painting is really fun to do, Brent. So I'll be realistic. I have a friend that does it, and he owns a shop, and he has them there. So
your stuff is awesome.
Yeah.
I had nothing wrong with your stuff. That's certainly not, I wouldn't consider that not an art.
Yeah.
I mean that's some seriously good work.
Yeah.
Hey, horrible stick people can be fun. XKCD.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. The thing I like about watercolors is the difference between cheap watercolor paints and expensive watercolor paints is really just the way that it stores. You get a little bit of a difference in the way it lays down, but like, for example, on my palette here, this top row is cheap. and you can tell because it's all cracked because it dried and then cracked.
Actually,
All the bottom ones down here are from Gyrie's, and they're all smooth, even though they're dry.
so what's the Top Rose label or brand?
I don't remember. So my dad got me. So I've kind of, for a long time, my dad and I were kind of at odds about this because he really wanted me. He didn't mind me being an artist. What he was really kind of sad about was that I wasn't an artist at night and a lawyer during the day, or something that brought in money. And I have become kind of a professional artist, and he's been sort of reluctantly taking a deep sigh now. And somewhere along the line, he went down to Texas Art Supply, which is a big, big place in Houston, and he bought this really beautiful wooden case that had a bunch of paints and a bunch of brushes and a bunch of pencils, and it had gouaches and it had oils and it had watercolors. And he was like, here, try this. Just try everything. Because, he knew I was drawing comics, but he was like, you should try everything else. Branch out. Get into some of the other paints. This is before I went to college. This was a long time ago. This is before I went back to college.
Mm-hmm.
And it was his sort of olive branch, because he's been he hasn't been on me, but he's been, I wish you'd gotten a job as a lawyer, and then you could do your paint thing at night, your art thing, and it just never really worked. So anyway, so the first paints on here are the ones that came from that set. So they are already 20 years old from the get-go, and they weren't expensive at the time because he got one of those all-in-one sets. It's a beautiful set. But, he got it for $100 for a ton of gouache, oils, watercolors, pencils, erasers, rulers, all of it. It was an all-in-one. It's a beautiful box. I love it. But so those aren't expensive. But I figured it was a good place to start because I've got them in a tube. It's a tube paint, which is, it's better than the cakes. Because I can't control the cakes, like I was saying, I really need to have a bucket that is Li Chang's skin color, and then that's it, and it never changes.
Yeah. And Donald did make a very good point for ethnic skin tones, probably to have two different browns to balance out the angles of the skin.
I agree.
That is completely accurate, but when you have like different types of tones that you're trying to achieve, especially with your captain, because I know the type of tone that you're going for.
Right.
I have a paint that I call like poppy skin. It's slightly pinkish, but it granulates.
Right.
And the granulating tone is because I have sienna, or basically a version of yellow ochre,
right,
combined with a red and a white titanium. Have a great day.
Bye, Allie.
Have a good time at school.
Yep. We'll see you later. Thanks for joining us.
But the reason why I bring it up is the skin tone that I'm talking about. I also have a neutral, or like a more on a neutral warmer brown that I can combine it with to make it darker at times. But what the main thing is when you're talking about skin tones, as well as and you're trying to manufacture them, you have to understand that other people have like underskin tones. So like not having the proper underskin tone when you're mixing the paint would be kind of bad. Like some of the things that I've added to skin tones, like people are like, you added a blue?
Right.
It doesn't look like there's any blue there. And I'm like, well, you kind of have to. And then there's also greens and purples and all of sort of deal. And, and you can kind of get away with it in comics. But like when you're trying to do repeat skin tone over and over and over and over again.
Well, that's where you have the problem.
Yeah, that's so what you can do.
Like I said, after I've mixed a few times, First of all, not only does it not match my skin tone, so I can't actually like just brush to my hand and go, okay, that's the right skin tone, because I don't actually have Asian skin. I know you're surprised, but it's true.
Well, I'm just looking at Donald's comment, and you know what? You're right. I have seen people who struggle with finding makeup that complements skin tones.
Well,
And
also a lot of makeup. I mean, we had this problem also with Asuka. Um, my semi-adopted daughter. Some makeup, a lot of the makeup industry is built for Caucasian women, and so
or lighter skin tones.
yeah, so if you're one of those, either the yellower skin tones or the darker skin tones, it's really difficult. I've got a niece who's very dark, and she just struggles with that from time to time. I've seen her go through numbers of shades of lipstick and numbers of, and all of them, she's like, does this look good? Does this work? Does this, and I'm like, it's not complimenting your skin. You've got to do something else. And I know that people do change tone. And of course, for me, there's the other side of this, which is comics are a way of broadcasting a story in symbols.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the symbolism in there is making sure the person's face is drawn the same from panel to panel, but also making sure that the color is the same from panel to panel. Because if you've got, let's say, my captain, who's Chinese, clearly Chinese, like Chinese straight up, because she came from a culture that was all trying to hold the Chinese lineage. And then you get, like, say, my first officer, who's Caucasian. You want them to be offsetting every time they're talking to each other in the proper way, so you don't accidentally flip them by cueing in on the color. So you want the Asian character to stay Asian and the first officer to stay Caucasian. And so I'm really working on, this is the color for this character, and if I have to mix them and then make a bucket full of it, I will.
That's what I was actually going to recommend doing. Mixing custom paint, and then making sure that you write down the formula that you use. Please. This is like a very big deal with a lot of the people that I have seen. Like, they
do not mix your paints like I cook dinner.
Yeah, like it's really bad. Like, I have a full list of, like, when I make paints and I'm making a mixed paint, where I take, like, the color codes and all of that stuff, and I'm just like, all right, I need to break down how much I'm putting in of each to keep consistency. But I will say I have come into a very big issue with that. Even though some pigments have the same pigment code, so like PY 73 is a color code for one of the yellow pigments.
All right. Oh yeah. And then Brent's saying he's forgotten to write down that mixture for minis all the time. Yeah. I totally agree, Brent. And that's one of those things that's just sad, because you get, like, I have gotten the perfect Federation hull color for all of my ships. So all my ships are uniform and they all have the exact right eggshell blue. Or if it's original series, then it's a certain shade of gray that's slightly green. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's so difficult to hit that right shade, which, of course, the Trekkies luckily will capture that. But in order for me to make a paint that I can put onto my hulls and hold them together so that they stay, so that this ship doesn't look slightly greener than that ship or whatever, I have a formula. And I lost that formula about 5 years ago, and I had to redo it. And then all my ships since about 5 years on, they're all slightly different. It's so irritating.
Yeah,
I feel you, Brent. I feel you, man.
Yeah, and Donald actually just put up another very good point when you're talking about Asian skin tones, because every region of what we considered Asia currently in the world, does have various skin tones from place to place.
Yeah, and usually, so it's interesting. Forensically speaking, there's only like 3 primary branches, and then those 3 branches have branched into smaller branches. Although Caucasian didn't actually branch very much, which is interesting. It's actually the Asian branches have branched all over the place.
Yeah, tell that to 23andMe.
Right. Well, but I mean, like, for some reason, the traits that make up Caucasians versus Asians or the Mongoloids is what they're called because they're from Mongolia, versus the Negroids, which would be the culture that's from Africa. The skull shapes and things like that. Those are the 3 main skull shapes, and then like aspects that come in. So it's,
we'll just focus on the like trying to make very perfect skin tones.
Right. Well, I keep finding, like, I'm on Instagram's art advice,
mm-hmm.
and every so often they will put up beautiful, beautiful little grids of people's skin tone, and I'm like, oh, and I'll just screen capture that.
Yeah.
And then I can just bring that up onto my computer here and say, this character is that skin tone, this character is that skin tone, and this character is that skin tone.
Yeah,
and there we go. It's
there's times where I'm like, I struggle with it. The darker the skin tone when you're painting and you want it like like an effect, you want to make sure that person represents whatever you're drawing and stuff like that. You can do great. You can do wonderful things. However, if you try to print some of these skin tones that you paint with,
mm-hmm.
watercolor wise, and then you try to print it, the printing process makes them darker.
Right.
And so they're not like super, like, even though you did this amazing painting, you could make it very off-putting by just having it printed improperly.
Right. Donald, it's funny you were saying that. I wanted to real quickly address that. There was a time where I swear that people were saying duck gray, and I couldn't figure out what duck gray was. It took me forever to find out that they were saying deck, because some people I couldn't understand them. It was an accent thing. But it's so funny because you put deck gray, and I'm like, oh yeah, actually I totally know. And of course, as a kid, which is the first time I had any interaction with the U.S. Navy, as a kid, I was like, because there are far worse words I could have thought they were saying. So the fact that I thought they said duck was pretty good. But anyway, yeah. I spent forever trying to figure out how to paint my model ships duck gray. And I ended up with like the weirdest grays. And because I'd go in and I'd say, I want duck gray. And they'd give me a green gray. Yeah. And so like my first aircraft carriers and things like that would be this kind of green gray. And it was like, it doesn't look right. There's something wrong here. So it's kind of funny, which is actually kind of ironic because the Enterprise actually is a green gray. It's slightly green if you do the original series Enterprise. Nothing from Next Gen's generation, but Next Gen generation, it's an eggshell blue. Yeah. It's not this light blue, but it's pretty close to that light blue. It's like my cloth. My cloth is pretty close to the type of light blue that Next Gen ships show up as.
Yeah.
Except for the Cerritos, which is two-tone. So.
Isn't Voyager's like a darker steel?
No, it's that's one of those things that's really funny. Voyager is just as duck blue as duck blue, or eggshell blue. It's just as eggshell blue as the Enterprise D. Mm. But because of the nature of the lighting that they use to light the models, they'll end up with these weird. It looks, and your brain will look at it and say, "Oh, that's silver."
Mm-hmm.
Well, billions of gallons of paint. So that orange primer, as a side note, that orange primer was also used, of course, by NASA. When they put the external fuel tanks on the shuttles, they put the orange primer on, and then they put the white overcoat on it. And then they realized that if they just left it primered, it would save them like tons of paint. And so that's why they went from a white external tank to an orange external tank later on, because they're like, why are we putting the white coat on the primer? Just primer it, guys. So they're using that orange primer that the Navy uses, because NASA is filled with Navy, Air Force, Army, and a handful of Marines. So they always borrow from the military. They are always borrowing from the military.
So another thing that I just popped in my head is, if you look up, Holbein is a paint company that a lot of people think is not based out of Japan, but is actually in Japan. It's like a super weird conundrum. Anyway, they actually, Miyazaki uses that for his concept sketching and stuff for movies.
Mm-hmm. I love Miyazaki's paints.
There's someone that recreated the Miyazaki palette on YouTube. It is phenomenal to see. And
what you call it?
Recreating Miyazaki's palette.
No, what was the name of the company?
Oh, Holbein. I actually have their paints. I'll get you the logo.
So like Pole?
Give me a moment.
Okay. Hi there. Our show is sponsored by my cat George and patrons like you. So, but mostly my cat George. Wherever he went, he was in here a little while ago causing trouble. Last night during the Geek Tank show.
So this is
Oh, okay, I see. HOLBEIN.
Yeah. And I just like mixed all my paints.
Aw.
Yeah. They're easy to put back together.
Yeah.
But the good thing is the 60, this one I got on Amazon when they were having a sale. So I got like
welcome back, Brent. I'm sorry you were disconnected.
Welcome back. So like this one, like a lot of people are like, what do you mean? Like you got this for really inexpensive? And I'm like, well, normally when you get this particular one, it tends to be a little bit, how should I say, expensive.
Right.
So I ended up getting this one. There were 60 paints in it. I got it for like $70-something because of the sale. So like if you're gonna get Holbein products, this set that I normally have is about in the hundreds of dollars, folks.
Right.
So make sure that you get it when it's on sale, because it'll save you a lot of money. Otherwise, per tube, these are the 15 milliliter tubes. So they are the smaller ones. If you're looking at in an art store, they can range for a 30 millimeter tube. They can range in price anywhere from $11 to $20-something.
Right. So there's a guy on Etsy who is just filling up Holbein buckets, and little buckets for these guys, and he'll sell you a bunch of them for $19. That's kind of cool, actually. I'm like, no, actually, because that's exactly what I would do, because like he's saying choose your own colors for the palette, and I'm like, that's cool, because I would rather honestly, I would rather just pick, rather than getting, a whole bunch of, chartreuses, which I'm like, I'd never use those. I'd rather have exactly what I'm looking for, which is the pinks and the
This right here, I'm gonna let you know right now. They have a company. They have some. They have a in this company. They have two colors that they use to and recommend as skin tone bases. And one is a shell pink, and the other one is a brilliant pink. However, they also have another one, which basically makes skin tone stuff. Because I know we were talking about skin tones earlier, but I make a lot of skin tone bases with these colors, and some of the colors on this palette, like you wouldn't realize would make a good skin tone palette, but but they do have a yellow gray, which is really, really good for if you just lighten it with some other of the paints and you just work with it. You can actually get a mixture that is really good for, I want to say, like the Philippine type skin tones, or the Southern Asian,
that more richer, darker skin, which is really lovely.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, when I'm dealing with Chang, I'm dealing with that lightest skin tone because of the nature of her culture that she comes from.
Right, and if you just water down, I believe it's I can't remember what it is. It's in Holbein the color code is W032. If you water that one down, you could actually probably get her skin tone on a consistent basis.
When I was mixing up paints at one point in time, somebody had recommended using yellow ochre with burnt sienna to get and then lighten that all the way up to get that color. Mayrel, the third of my main characters on here, who used to be Ward, for those of you who actually followed Tamerlane, Mayrel is now much darker. She's a much darker skin tone than both of the main characters. She's more like what Donald's talking about, the South Pacific Islander, those very, very dark islanders. So she's now a much darker skin, which is great because now the three of them visually are very easy to tell apart from each other. You can really see them when they're standing next to each other, not only in black and white, but in color. In both of those, they're very easily distinguishable, which is really what I was after. So making Mayrel part of the Deastati clan made a much different skin tone, culture. It added a whole lot to her.
Yeah, I do want to point out though that yellow ochre is also known as raw sienna.
Yeah.
So when you combine burnt sienna and yellow ochre,
raw sienna and yellow ochre have a slightly different tone.
They do, but a lot of the times, like if you get French, like where they're coming from there, yellow ochre is also known as sienna in certain parts of France. Yeah. So it's once you start going into that rabbit hole, trust me, you don't want to be there sometimes.
I wonder if there's like a skin tone set.
There is actually. It's actually really good. It's by a company called Prima.
Prima does those, yeah.
Prima's skin tone set is actually pretty good. It doesn't work for me because they don't have certain tone values that I like getting when I make my own. But also,
that might be something I might go about doing, is picking up just skin tones and loading up some of these lower racks down here with just various skin tones.
Oh, you got the 48 set, so you have a lot of room.
Yes, I did. I got lots of room. Look at all the room I got.
Yeah. I have Well, I mean, I have. Let me see. I can like give you some tonal charts if you want, but like a lot of the
Yeah.
times the skin you also have to remember like you also have to shadow properly.
Well,
Which,
shadowing is still one that I don't do very well because you're supposed to shadow with like a purple, and I never get that straight. It just looks like they've got a purple blotch on the side of their face, and I'm like, well, that didn't work.
yeah,
I have to get that right, and I'm still messing up that balance a lot. Yeah, that's Donald. That's what I'm thinking of doing.
yeah. Just do your own. Just do your own
I'm
skin
just going to
tone
make my
palette.
and just like you were saying at the very beginning, be sure to write the formula down.
Yes, please do. There is a Holbein.
I have both done. Which is
Uh,
watch
if
that.
you look up that Miyazaki making Miyazaki palette,
Uh huh.
they actually have a discontinued Holbein color. So if you get two paints and do the color combo, it's like a 9-to-1 or a 10-to-1 type ratio,
Right.
where it's like basically it's called gray pink, and it's like a whole bunch of pink, and then you add like one drop of like a type of purple,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a basically what it is it's a cool purple and a warm pink, and the combination you would think would make a like just
A
like
mess.
purplish pink. However, because one's a cool tone and one's a warm tone, it actually grays slightly, and it is perfect for like shadowing.
Right.
Um,
So Grey Pink is the lesser known Korean pop group, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, gray pink is. Actually, I think they're slightly. I think they were more discovered on the Japanese pop or the J-pop scene, and then you know went there.
Grey Pink.
But I mean, the color is super simple to recreate on your own. You don't need Holbein. You just need to know the tone that you're going for.
Yeah, I mean, like the ones that I get from Guy Reese, and I think they're just the Guy Reese normal paints. They're expensive, but they're usable, or they're. I mean, it's like $2 a tube or $3 a tube, so I can't just go buy a whole bunch of them. But
Yeah,
you get a lot, and it's like it's very useful, and they do fill my little containers really nicely, and they don't slop over and crack or any of the weird stuff. But I have also, by the way, recently fallen in love with Othello blue. That's like my favorite color ever.
that's a Gary specific color, right?
Maybe. I'm not sure. Plausibly.
Yeah, like I don't know which color
Very,
you're
very
talking
pretty.
about because it's the first time I've ever heard of it.
It's an extremely rich blue. And I
Can you
like
show
it
it
a
on
lot.
the screen so that
Maybe.
I can see it?
It's that one right there. This one.
Okay.
It's
All
a
right.
very, very rich blue.
It looks like yeah, I've seen that color. It's labeled differently in other brands.
Right. But it's a very, very rich blue. There we go. I'll close the lid so it
Yeah.
doesn't smack my monitor. But yeah.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, I adore that blue. And it's like I've decided, if you were to ask me what shade of blue is my favorite shade of blue, because I'm a fan of blue, as you can see by everything that's trimmed. Fingerpaint for a day. You know what?
Well, I actually, Donald, I will tell you right now, I have the Himi gouache set, and the Himi gouache set actually smells like finger paint.
Oh man.
It is amazing. It like I crack those things open in the little gel cups, and I'm like, it smells like finger paint. I love this.
Finger painting. So I used to love finger painting when I was a kid, but then something like went wonky in my brain, and I hated getting things on my hands, which is one of the reasons why I don't like water or don't like oils, because the oils get everywhere. But it also stopped me from working on cars. I was a major gearhead in high school, and I'd like rebuild. I rebuilt my entire Vega like 3 times, for various reasons. And
Because it was a Vega.
well, for one, it was a Vega. Well, so the Vega, they built it was the first car that had an aluminum engine, so they put these steel sleeves in the cylinders, and the sleeves, after 20 years, the sleeves would start moving with the cylinders, and so it'd start leaking oil everywhere and burning oil. And so the only thing you can do is pull the engine out. So we had to pull the short block out once in my engine and rebuild the entire thing, crankshaft up. So I mean, I've gotten pretty. Yeah, I know, finger paint with gloves on. That might not be a bad idea.
So I have the opposite thing. Like, I can't wear gloves for very long.
Well, and that's, I think part of it is, we're, as artists, there's a certain amount of very tactile something with us. We're connected very much to the tactile, because every artist I know has something about how they hold a pen, or what the surface of the pen has to be, or what kind of paper they can use, or the brushes, or everybody seems to have like something that's involved. You can't wear gloves. I can't have paint on my hands. I
mean, I do, like, let me be realistic. I do wear gloves when I make paint.
Right.
Especially for certain colors that are kind of, like, if I end up getting a color that I don't really trust the toxic level.
Yeah.
I'm very careful when I'm doing that type of thing. However, I try to
get over it. I mean, when I was doing my painting that I did this week, I did a watercolor. You can't see it, but it's over there. I did a watercolor, and I put in the space background, and then put in stars with a white pen, and the white pen leaked on my hand. So it's not like it makes me completely freak out. But even today, it's been 5 days, and I'm still doing this number because this is where that was. Yes, you've been posting those on Instagram.
Yeah.
See, I used my gold watercolor paint for my starship. So the deflector dish, like, it's gold, and when you run it by the light like this, the deflector dish all shines and stuff. I was all excited.
Well, the major tip that I actually will do to say right now to people is, if you want a gold color, like if you are working with a gold color and you're noticing that it doesn't set like flat matte like the metallic, you can put like an undertone of like a yellow or some type of thing, and then so when you put that over and it's not shimmering, you still see a color, and it's not like a white or anything like that. And paint from flowers is a little bit difficult for me to do, Donald.
But
it is doable.
Mm-hmm.
However, the colors. So when you're doing like paint colors, natural pigments like rose madder, and I think potter's pink is another one where they rely on plant material. Some of the sourcing or some of the stuff that you can get from those flowers doesn't necessarily translate well for me. So, sorry, I can't remember if rose madder was actually from plant or not, but I do know that potter's pink is. It's like a they sell it on a couple of different pigment sites where it's whole, and
Right.
then basically what you have to do is you have to grind it yourself, and then use it with your medium and stuff like that. It's a lot of work. I'm lazy.
Right. Well, it's not that I don't know if it's necessarily lazy. I'm noticing this now as I'm still in world building, prepping, all of that stuff. Although I'm pretty much past world building now and into writing, there's just not enough time. There's not enough time to do all the pieces. So shortcuts, any shortcuts I can take, I will. And I actually was so happy last night. I saw a video on Ross Draws, this artist that I follow a lot, his name is Ross, and he's a lot of fun. He usually has like his puppy and stuff like that, but his videos are very high energy. But he did something last night that was so cool, and I was like, oh man. He went out to the pool and took a picture of himself doing this, and then went over and drew Korra, or one of the characters from The Last Airbender, and he literally just drew over himself. He went out and posed, and then drew over himself. And I was like, oh, thank goodness. Because there's a stigma about tracing. And when I get into my fast mode and I'm trying to cut corners, I'll just use DAZ Studio, set up the entire scene, take a screenshot of it, and then just trace in there the characters. Right? Mm-hmm. And there's a stigma about tracing, but the truth of the matter is I can do a page an hour at that rate.
Well, I just want to point something out. That's technically not tracing if you're not copying.
Right.
Tracing. So a lot of the times, like, people have like this notion of like tracing is like a copy.
Right.
No, it's not. Sometimes tracing is just for form, and then you're putting your character there. What I think people like blur the line a bit is when you're copying a character. Like when you're using their same facial expression, you're using the same thing, but you just change of like just slightly.
Yes, that makes sense.
And that one's a little bit different, like because people can point that out really, 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 really quickly.
Right.
And
Brent's talking about the maquettes, and that's exactly what I'm talking about is the DAZ Studio maquettes. That makes me feel uncomfortable to put that out there whenever I use those maquettes, but as I showed on yesterday's show, I went past the form, design, box, all those steps where you do like boxes and, the box for the head and the box for the all of that, and then having to refine and then refine and then refine. I cut through all of that in 10 minutes by setting up maquettes.
Yeah.
I went straight to line and then a refined line underneath that.
Yeah, I mean, but maquettes are actually, that's what they're for.
Right.
Okay.
And that's sort of what DAZ was invented for.
Yeah, I mean, don't don't beat yourself up because maquettes are actually useful. I wish that they made maquettes for bigger people.
You can absolutely do that in DAZ. DAZ has morphs.
I mean, like the actual figures, they're always
muscular. I've got a set of I got a set of maquettes that I purchased while I was in Japan, and I love those guys. Since they're Japanese, they are anatomically correct, so I can't actually show them on here without getting us into a R rating, which is hysterical. But
I think now they have actually started to cover those areas now.
I think that's silly on a lot of. I mean, I was trained when I first did art in the 90s. I was trained to use the nipples as a target point to make sure
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that I think whoever was making maquettes, like the real maquettes, physically. And a lot of the times people like look at them and also like correlate the BCG dolls, which are basically maneuverable, manipulating dolls that are higher end.
Right.
They started doing is they may have the nipples, but below the waist they stopped doing stickers to hide the areas. Yeah. They started doing more of like a round or basically just a bump.
Right.
And it's not like a defined area. And I think they started doing that because the maquettes started leaving Japan.
Right. Which, started coming here and then becoming trouble for everybody. And it's like,
no, just becoming trouble with prudish Americans.
Yeah, prudish Americans. Yay, prudish Americans.
Yeah. Gotta love them. Sometimes they are the best PR.
Okay, let's real quickly because we are kind of running up on.
We are actually almost out of time.
So let's go ahead and real quickly talk about your workflow. You've had this on your to-do list for a couple of weeks now.
And I'm only still managing it to do a couple of days a week.
But how is it coming along? I mean, are you at least evolving it?
It's evolving, yes.
Yeah, like a cone.
I'm sorry, not on Conan's, but yeah, it's evolving. It definitely is.
Good.
Really,
I don't expect you to be done with it yet, but I'm hoping at least you've worked on it and kind of done it. It's kind of like my 1,500 words a night had to take an entire week off because my sister was here, and every night we were doing something, and it seemed kind of mean to say, "I'm sorry, I'm so glad you came up to visit me, but goodbye." So
well, and also you have to, like, with the adoption process that we're going through and stuff like that, like sometimes
problems kind of going on.
Yeah, we sometimes I'm just like, all right, I need to get this done, and then I'm like, oh wait, I have to work. And then there was a few days where it's harder for me to work in my office area because my husband has meetings.
Right.
And it's just like, I don't want to interrupt. I don't want to make noises with him in the background. I mean, for obvious reasons, if you watch the show before with me on it, I always there's sometimes where I call my husband. Right. And he answers questions. So,
it is a thing.
It is a thing, but we share an office space. So
talking to your husband because your husband and I get along because we're with Trekkies.
Well, yes, and the fact is, I mean, you can't go wrong with someone who is invested in the Star Trek. So
right, I'm just saying, us Trekkies rock. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean,
that's just the way it goes.
But I mean, I'm going to continue to work on it, and that's basically what it is. It's going well. I'm trying. I'm going this next coming week, starting on Monday. There's a lot of changes in my life that's going to be happening, so I'm going to try to buckle down and focus a little bit more. Me and Bill are going away for the weekend.
So.
Workflow, yeah.
Do you think it's going to have an impact on it?
No, well, it's part of it. So it's, I'm including in what I'm actually having to do. Basically, it's I have to lose about 10 or 15 more pounds, stuff like that.
I got that too.
Life-changing, joys of getting older and wanting to have kids and being around.
It's all about the Star.
Brent, are you trying to start a war?
He is. He always
war?
Perpetually starts wars. He likes to pick fights.
Yeah. Wow. I come from a house that Trek built. What?
I know.
What is this Star Wars you're talking about? We do not believe in magic.
Oh, man. No, he just likes to pick fights. It's all good.
No, just to give a heads up, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. I do know the fandom.
Yeah.
I watch the movies, stuff like that. I'm just not a huge...
The Mandalorian rocks.
I mean, I'm just not a huge, overtly, oh my god, it's Star Wars. I'm not that involved. I'm not invested in Star Wars in that manner. Star Trek, however, I mean, okay, now you're just, now that oh my god, no,
mixing it up in there. Mixing it up.
Stargate, yes, Star Wars. You know what? Stargate is actually, for me, is if you combine Star Wars and Star Trek, you get Stargate.
Oh, that's fair. I could see that. I mean, there have been some wonderful shows. I mean, I consider myself part brown coat. I consider myself, there's definitely a love for Babylon 5. I do love Star Wars quite a bit. But I, in my heart, I will. My entire soul belongs to the Federation, and I know that, and it's just right. It's all good.
And you know what? In my heart, if Star Trek was not on, or any of the sci-fi shows that weren't on, Guess what show would be in my heart? Dark Shadows.
Dark Shadows. Here's Brent Spock he's working on.
Oh, cool.
It's kind of hard to see. I'm trying not to let the ring
Yeah.
light on the camera shine on it.
Oh, I mean,
I'm actually kind of wondering, because Brent, the color codes that Brent's working on, what uniform? I almost want to say that looks like a motion picture uniform for him, which is cool.
Segueing back, how's everything going for your goal?
So that's sort of where we're heading there. We got, my 1,500 words a night has been kind of disrupted a little bit because of family and stuff like that, but that's okay. I am now already, I had a couple of really interesting epiphanies. Coming back to Facebook has allowed me well, it gave me a different perspective on a lot of things that are going on. When people are having arguments on Facebook, I'm like, now I'm starting to see the 10,000 foot view on a lot of this. And so
you're where I am at.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to rewrite a couple of my cultures. That's not going to affect directly. Most of the stuff that I'm doing with world building is going to be a one-liner here or a one-liner there, but I feel like it will help with the fabric of the universe, because in episode 1, they're going to talk about, Joe Smith being voted in. And in episode 12, Joe Smith has just done this thing in legislation, right? They'll both be throwaway lines, but it'll fit with the consistency and the continuity of everything, because you'll be hearing about this politician or that politician doing this thing or that thing, because in real life, that's what we talk about when we've got nothing better to do, right? We talk about Donald Trump, or we talk about Obama, or we talk about, what's going on in the world. And every time I talk to my friends in Japan, we're talking about the Abe administration and stuff like that. And it's usually just did you hear about blah, blah, blah? Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about something else, Yeah. But generally it adds to the feel and the fabric of the story to have this backstory. Well, I've been kind of coming up with some ideas about some other cultures and some other things that are going on. And I feel like I can probably make a good case for an entire episode later on in the series that talks a little bit about the culture clash between two cultures, which is very similar to what's going on in the United States, but people don't see it. And so I'm kind of curious whether I can make sort of a Star Trek, come around to the other side so that you can't see it. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, is he talking about us? That's what I'm hoping for. As all good Star Trek writers, that's one of the things that we think about all the time is, how can I sneak this in without anybody noticing it right off the bat? Yeah. I have an idea, I have a concept. I wonder if I could throw this in this story without anybody noticing it.
Yeah, I actually came up with something in Treehouse Witch, and it's definitely affected by current events. Basically, the grandmothers, so the main character's grandmother, and then the grandmothers of the two characters that are from a different universe of our own world. I stated at one point they were friends, stuff like that. A thought occurred to me is, I don't know when my main character, who is the Treehouse Witch, I don't know when her grandmother crossed over from that world into the magic world or the magic universe. So, and I never really explained how they really truly knew one another. So it came up with this thing, and now, I mean, this may be upsetting to some people, but I did go the route.
It's upsetting me. Oh, wait.
I did go the route where basically the grandmother's parents, the magic grandmother, literally came over after purchasing the grandmother. And
Right.
in the magic world, since time works differently, basically when when the parents died, the main character's grandmother tried to let her just go, like go into the other world and live her life with her family that were left behind. And ultimately, her family had already passed, and so she only found like a descendant nephew type deal. That was it. That was all was left of her family. But then I came up with this thing where the grandparent, since the people that enacted a contract or basically purchased her, they did something to her magically.
Mm-hmm.
In which case, she has to serve her grandmother until the end of her days, and her children also have to serve her family.
Wow.
But the two main characters that the witch character meets, she basically does a test, and this is where how I explain things. And in the test, the twin siblings basically are shown that they do not have the contract in their blood.
Interesting.
So basically, what it was the grandmother. So I made a rule for magic societies.
Mm-hmm.
Magic cannot
Part
enslave
of what we've
magic.
got to do with world building is what are the rules?
Yeah,
I think that's one of the reasons why you end up with rich universes like Star Wars and Star Trek is because the culture understands the rules. And so when writers come back in, we know that you can't beam through shields, and lightsabers can cut through doors, and we learn the rules, so you don't sit there and go, I use my lightsaber as a boomerang. You can't, unless you've got Jedi powers.
yeah.
So it becomes one of those things where you have like a set of rules.
Yeah, so yes, Donald, to answer your question, it's like a fate bond to the soul, but not just the soul, it's carried through the bloodline. The only way to cure it is I made a rule: magic cannot enslave another magic user.
Right.
So what happened was the character was encouraged to pursue a person who has natural innate magical ability. So the character that I'm talking about, her children, one of them has passed, one of them is still alive, has a 50-50 chance because she married a man that had natural magical ability. Her grandkids have magical traits, and since meeting the witch, they're starting to kind of get more magical type. So basically, the grandkids have no, like, they get the urge to do something if she tells them, but they can suppress it. So it won't be until the next generation that it's completely gone.
I wonder if there would ever. I mean, because now I'm like, wouldn't it be interesting if you had a character who is blood bonded like that, but they have to suppress their their use of like I've been reading Dune recently, so their use of the voice, right? Clean your room, and the kid goes off and cleans his room right away, and then it's like, wait a minute.
Well, and that's why like when this comes out, like in the story, it's a huge deal because it actually happens when my main character's mother comes into the picture, and
Right.
she's just I don't really like her mother character, and I prove it in this because her grandmother's there, her aunt's there, she's there, and her mother is like yeah. No, it's definitely, but basically the contract is the contract with one person, Donald. Since the grandmother, since a magic user can bonded with her through blood by having children, it started breaking the curse or the
Right.
basically the fate bond. So that's basically what I'm talking about. It's not really carried in the genes. It's basically more or less it's affecting like a signature of someone type deal. But anyways, I'm like rambling because I'm like talking about this.
And we've got to somewhere along the line roll out here. I've been looking up skin tone watercolor paints, and I'm like, oh, fascinating.
Yeah, Prima's actually the one that's probably the cheapest that I've found.
Yeah, well, I just found for the benefit of Brent, I just found the model color Viejo 16 colors flesh tone, which is great because I haven't found it for watercolors, but I did find it apparently
Mission Viejo?
Yeah, for minis.
Ah, okay, yeah.
Which that's where Brent and I are that's where we share the Venn diagram, So okay, well, I think we should let you go. Yeah, see, that's what I want you to do. Is like I got a whole bunch of these little empty buckets right here.
Well, I have a full pan, and I can't remember on how I made this color. So if I gave that to you, you would replace 2 of those buckets.
I want skin tones. That's what we're at.
Skin tone. This is a shadow. I'm showing you.
There you go. So, you're saying use that for shadow? That might be part of my problem. Because that looks like much more like a lavender.
It is.
And I've been using a deeper purple, more like a violet. And that's probably why it looks like they've got a plotch of purple on their face. Because I should be tap Centaur skin. That makes sense. That I think now that I think about it, I'm like, I think that might be my problem right there. So
yeah. That's why I like the gray pink.
Gray pink. Okay, I'm done.
Well, I do need to get going. So
we need to cut the show so that you can get on with your day. Yep. But it was great chatting with you today.
Yes, and this is the first time that we've talked about like art almost consistently.
I know. Look at us. Look at us being artists.
I
Look
know.
at us actually doing our jobs.
All right. But I want to just say thank you for everyone that chimed in and stuff. Yeah, like if you have
Allie for the few minutes that we had Allie on here, that was cool.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of things that I have to still talk about, but I definitely need to get going.
Well, we'll see you. You could probably be here next Friday, I think, or we hope you'll be here next Friday. We'll find out. We'll find out on Thursday.
Luna, you're coming in just as we're leaving.
Yeah, I know.
Why?
Oh, Luna just showed up.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh yeah. Deep purple Zentradi from Macross. Yes.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why I think my shadows on skin tones suck.
So you know what? We just need
a learning process.
Actually, we can actually now get together, just not in a public space. We can like get together in one of our homes.
Yes.
And I can bring
sit there with you and go, no, show me how to do that, please.
What I'll do is I'll just have to bring my skin tone palette that I have created, and we'll swatch and see what we can do to make yours.
You have a dressed thing? I don't know what a dressed thing is.
Oh, she has to get dressed for work.
Oh, well, I'm glad to see you for the few minutes, although you did miss an awesome show. We spent a lot of time discussing watercolors. So you missed a really good show.
Maybe next week we can just film together.
Some more about.
Yeah, maybe we can film together at your house, and I'm sitting there doing swatching with you.
That might not be a bad idea, actually. I've been wanting to try to figure out how to broadcast off of here, because I know that I can get to the website on my phone, and so I should be able to just pop the kickstand and sit it on a table, or put it on one of those arms, and put it over the table so we can be at the table and stuff like that. So that might not be a bad idea.
Well, let's figure that out, and I will tentatively say that I'm going to your house next Friday.
That'd be awesome.
Just remember, I need to bring my paint with me.
Right, because it won't help if we just sit there at the table and stare at each other for 2 hours. That would be like, this is a ridiculous show.
Well, I mean, I think your wife will probably wonder why we're staring at one another, and we'll just basically have to say we're doing a televised staring contest. No blinking.
Damn it. This sucks. Okay. I'll see you guys. Yeah, trying to blend to the center. That'd be cool. We were both painting to the center, trying to blend in the middle there. Every time anything like that happens, it reminds me of that one meme that went around a long time ago with a guy that was brushing his teeth and he had like a full beard and everything like that. And he would brush his teeth and he started brushing his beard. Then before you knew it, he was brushing everything. And he had like soap all over his face. And he was like, ah! That's funny. Okay, guys.
Psychic painting.
Right? Psychic painting. Well, we'll see you guys all. I'll see you guys next Monday, and I'll see you, Pepper, on Friday. And thank you very much for joining me. It was great having you guys here. Keep your eyes on the stars. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.